Hello, welcome. So, the reason why developers need a fast computer, right, when it comes to compiling and processing lines of code, is that developers are constantly compiling thousands of lines of code in websites such as Facebook or Twitter. But then AAA game titles such as Grand Theft Auto or Assassin's Creed are compiling tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly even millions of lines of code. So what are the benefits of a fast computer with regards to processing and compiling? As a developer, I compile thousands of lines of code each day. I have timed these compilation times with the PC specs and a number of lines of code. Although lines aren't really the matter, it's more the number of methods and functions being used that determine the compiling time of a project. On a desktop with an Intel i5 3770 at 3.8 GHz, 32 gigs of RAM and a standard hard disk drive, the compiling time of the same program without any changes and in the same version of Visual Studio, it took around 12 seconds to compile. On an Alienware laptop with an Intel i7 2630QM at 2 GHz with only 8 gigs of RAM and an SSD, compiled the same program without any changes and in the same version of Visual Studio, and it took around 10 seconds. Now, given that the fact that the two computers were not fresh installation of Windows, so there was clutter and background process and everything that would have affected the compiling time, the speeds at which the programs were compiled are varying, in the sense that a process of 1.8 gigahertz more was slower. Even though it had 24 gigs more RAM, it was also slower. And this comes down to how fast a computer can read and cache lines of code or methods and each word and everything, etc. in a file, in multiple files. So the Alienware, because it had an SSD, it has reading and writing speeds like 10 times faster than that of a hard disk drive. And so it was able to read the code and compile it faster and cache into the RAM much faster than a hard disk drive can. And even though its processor is slower and has less RAM, because projects aren't going to take up a lot of RAM space when you're compiling, you don't need 32 gigs of RAM to do this. 8 gigs of RAM is perfectly enough, and if you have an SSD, it compensates for the speed of your processor. Processors can process pretty fast, so having a faster processor in this case isn't going to make much of a difference, unless of course you are compiling a game like Grand Theft Auto or Assassin's Creed. So I hope this kind of cleared up a bit of a grey area as to why developers need a fast computer, and maybe you can make a better choice next if you're going into development on what computer specs to go for. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, share it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.